let's say if there is a conflict between QA and developer, let's
Use
say
things.
you usual things. Now ask them to come up with a testing plan of it, and
Hmm.
then maybe you can judge it
Good.
how detailed the person is.
And they might be applying to multiple companies, all of which
Yeah,
are doing the same thing, right?
yeah, and because in QA field, people want to move to automation at some point early or later stage. But if you have a motivation to learn new things, right,
Yeah.
then you might be a better candidate for me.
Hey guys, this is Raj from Reczee. Today we are going to decode QA hiring. We have a veteran in QA who has been writing tests for over a decade now. Uh, Welcome, Arpit. How are you doing? And if you can also introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hey, Raj. Thanks for asking me out for this call. Yeah, I'm Arpit. I'm doing great. I hope you are also doing great. And yeah, as you mentioned, I'm working as a QA person since a decade. I have worked in quite a few startups, built out the QA team, and implemented the end-to-end process for QA, how to do manual testing, how to do automation, and also built out quite a few CDCI pipelines for better rollout of products with good quality, sort of, so that your users don't bug you, sort of, that this is not working, this feature is not very visible, not very functional, sort of. Yeah, and happy to help for this call. And yeah, that's about me.
Sounds great, Arpit. Thanks a lot. Primarily, we are going to focus on hiring since you have been building teams around QA. So I think it would be really valuable for our audience as well to learn about QA. So yeah, let's dive into it. One of the first question which I had is like I've seen a lot of resumes of QAs as well as say other functions, say tech product, so on. uh, I feel there is some sort of uh, formatting issue. There's some sort of standardness issue, which is much more widely spread in QA as a function. So, what do you think? First of all, do you think this is true? Do you think this is when you hire, when you review resumes? Do you think this is something which is much more visible there?
Yeah, I think resume screening is the first step for every hiring, right? And it's very difficult to screen out a resume. And being a QA, right? QA is like having manual testing, having automation. Some place it has hybrid of it, like 50% manual, 50% automation. And it also depends on quite a few applications that you have worked, right? Maybe your experience is more towards website. It can be more towards mobile or desktop app or any other classic engineering problem, sort of.
Right.
And I have seen, I have also noticed the same similar pattern, sort of, that there are resumes, and there are variety of resumes that will come to you.
Right.
And there is definitely some structuring issue, sort of, because I've seen very clean resumes as well, where people stick to what they have done and how they explain it. But I have seen resumes where people put a lot of summary, they put skill set, a whole checklist of it. Then they also talk about like what project they have worked,
Right.
and also give description and all of those. It goes for 2-3 pages.
Yeah.
Um, and quite a few resumes I've seen very unformatted as well, like not a standard format. It's the alignment is missing, indentation is missing. There are fonts all over places, sort of.
Right.
So that's basically the issue that we generally face in resume screening, but I think it's also applicable to other fields.
Right, right. Of course,
Uh,
there are
yeah,
some exceptions, of course, which are like formatting really well. They are good at presentation skills. I'm sure that it's also a reflection of how the person themselves is. So it's not that all the resumes are like that. But
yeah.
what do you think, as a community or as leaders in the sort of industry, what should we recommend for them to sort of get better from this stage, basically?
Yeah, in my opinion, I would say like keep it very short, sort of short and simple, and in a way like you can keep it very basic as well.
Right,
You don't need to mention like this is my summary. I worked on this thing, this tools, and all of those, so that it doesn't get people confused.
right,
Stick stick to what experience that you have. Like let's say I worked in XYZ company. Just mention that what kind of work environment was it, whether it was a hybrid, remote, or in location, and then add a summary of projects. Basically, uh, built out X test suite, or I completed like a feature testing of this many products. This is what we did it in feature testing. These are the tools that we used, and similarly follow that for respective companies that you have worked, and maybe if you have done any certifications, keep it in a one single place so that it's not
right.
all over the place, and then people can uh, think that there is a cleaner way of showcasing your resume, that this is my work experience, this are my certificates. And maybe if you want to mention like skill set levels, you can also mention it in a very simple way,
Got it.
all of that. And I think there are a couple of other details that people add, like education and things like that. I believe that is relevant for being a fresher,
Right,
because sometimes people do care about like which university the candidate is from, and does the candidate have computer
right,
science information, or like engineering background, basically,
right,
in
right,
some way. Um, but as you grow like from fresher to little bit experience, I don't think that might be relevant, so
right,
we can cut that off and keep it very simple. Work experience, skill set, certifications, and
right.
any external projects, and also make sure that you add links to your projects, either GitHub, Bitbucket, or any SCM repositories that you are using.
So as you mentioned, recruiters are also going to sort of review these resumes, right? So as a
Yeah.
hiring manager, what kind of information do you pass on to your recruiter that, okay, these are the traits that you're looking for, or any specific things that you ask them to look for if you're hiring? Let's discuss this for a manual testing role as well as for an automation testing role, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a little bit tricky to pass on this information to anyone, right?
Right,
Even though it's like a recruiting manager or your junior,
right.
it might be difficult. So first, I think maybe you can discuss out with the panel,
Mhm.
recruiters, your hiring manager, your team, and
Mhm.
figure out like exactly what kind of skill set you want in the candidate,
Right,
and then maybe classify it as like what is good to have, what is must have, right?
right,
So recently I worked at InstaWork, right? So
right,
which is where our users are majority of our users are on mobile experience, right?
right.
So what we want is like people having mobile experience.
Mhm.
So that is like must to have, sort of.
Right,
So you pass on that information to recruiters, like mobile testing is must have,
right,
web testing is maybe a good to have, sort of. And
right,
then some soft skills like good in communication. And as you drill down in manual or automation, right?
right,
Then maybe focus on the manual side. You can ask recruiters to focus a little bit on like give them questionnaire, basic questionnaire, like
right,
what kind of application they have tested,
right,
have they participated in test planning, feature test case building and all of those, right? Basic questions.
Got
Um,
it.
and it also sometimes depend on like whether the candidate has only web experience or the
Got it.
candidate has desktop app experience, right?
Right.
Then you can keep it a general checklist sort of that.
Mhm.
Maybe just ask them like, have you done feature testing? Have you done like mobile app testing, web app testing, or
Right.
have you participated in building test planning?
Mhm.
um, Keeping it very simple on manual side
Right.
and on automation side, right? That's where the whole tricky piece begins because
Right.
it's little bit technical, right?
Yeah.
And it might be little bit tricky for recruiters also to understand. Like even if you give them a checklist that these are the tools that you look into a resume,
Right.
but recruiter doesn't have any clue like what kind of tools are being used for what things, right?
Right. Yeah.
So maybe just give them a general template. If a candidate says that they have worked in web part, then
Right.
ask them about like how good are they in programming, how good
Right.
are they in Selenium or relevant testing tools, sort of, and maybe ask them if they have also worked for API testing or they have built a framework around it,
Got it.
right?
Got it.
And similarly, if you go on to mobile side, right, then it comes to Appium and what's the proficiency, sort of, and uh, that grows basically from the candidate experience as well. Like for
Right.
fresher, we can keep it basic.
Right.
For little bit experience, we can judge it little bit on detailed manner, like
Right.
how much years of experience do you have on this platform, this
Right.
on these tools, something like that. And basic like communication, how good they are to pass on this information to anyone, right?
Right.
Even though it's like a recruiting manager or your junior,
Right.
it might be difficult. So first, I think maybe you can discuss out with the panel,
Mhm.
recruiters, your hiring manager, your team, and
Mhm.
figure out like exactly what kind of skill set you want and how open they are to learn the tool, sort of.
New tools and other things,
Yeah,
right? Makes sense. Makes sense. So this is on the recruiter side, right? That they would probably do one level of screening on the traits that you have probably shared on a job description that
yeah,
you are sharing
yeah,
with recruiters. But then, like in devs, I can probably say that uh, on the recruiter's end, there is some sort of keyword matching, proficiency, communication checking on the recruiter's end. But then in devs, usually hiring managers also check their social profiles like GitHub, if they have competitive programming profiles and so on and so forth at the hiring manager stage, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
do you have any such pointers for the QA hiring managers? What kind of traits they should look for before they even have an interview or a call with the candidate? What can
Yeah.
they see from their resume itself?
Yeah, yeah. So basically, again, it drills down to the what kind of role we are looking for, whether it's a
Mhm.
manual, whether it's automation.
Right,
If you are looking purely for manual side, right? Then basically check for something like test planning, what kind of features they have tested, right?
right,
Maybe if candidate lists down the project they have worked,
right,
just go to the website, check it out, how the website looks like, what kind of things they have worked on.
right,
Um, that might be relevant to screening part.
right.
Um, for manual side, also it might be a little bit tricky because ev- every single candidate's resume would look similar.
Yeah, because everyone would have written test planning somewhere, right? So for you to
Yeah,
judge,
yeah. So that's where basically then you go to couple of other steps.
right,
Like one is go to the links or website or product they have mentioned in
right,
some way,
right,
and just check it, like whether it's a website, whether it's a mobile app, how it looks, sort of.
right.
It might be like finding a needle in a haystack kind of a
Yeah,
situation.
right,
But if candidate has listed down the links, it's very easy. And uh, I used to do similar things.
right.
But then again, it consumes a lot of time for hiring manager, and I don't think like any hiring manager would spend so much time
Yeah,
for it, sort of.
right,
So maybe like if you want to judge a candidate on manual side, right? Like how much experience they have working on web or mobile or anything. So you can build a questionnaire and then just upload it into your on the hiring website itself, right? Wherever
Right.
you are posting the job on your
Right.
career page on LinkedIn or anywhere else,
Right.
just post down basic things. Have you worked on web, mobile, or desktop app? Uh,
Right.
how much experience you have,
Right.
and have you created test planning or anything like that?
Right.
And maybe you can drill down to a couple of other things, like do you have product based companies experience? Do you have do you have like MNC service level
Right.
experience and things like that?
Right.
So that can help you filter out candidates, sort of.
Yeah. This is
Uh,
more objective measure you can sort of
yeah,
filter off. Yeah.
and it also makes it easier for you to screen
Yeah.
that this is the candidate. I have this basic questionnaire that I want, and then I can jump into resume screening and then do a detailed dive in, sort of.
Right.
So this is the kind of role we are looking for, whether it's a
Mm.
manual, whether it's automation.
Right.
If you are looking purely for manual side, right? Then basically check for something like test planning, what kind of features they have tested, right?
Right.
Maybe a recent update that we had done it, because like we had spent a lot of time in hiring for our companies as well, right?
Right.
So it's tricky to judge candidates. Then
Yeah.
basically, you might get a hell lot of resumes based
Right.
on like even like if your opening is specific to like 1 to 3 years or maybe 3 to 5 years, people apply. Like
Right.
candidates will apply, sort of.
Right.
So it becomes easy for you to also categorize it, right? So
Right.
if
Right.
a candidate says like I have 3 to 5 years experience, hiring manager can identify that maybe for if you have multiple openings, right? Let's
Right.
move that candidate to a senior role. Let's
Right.
move this candidate to a junior role and things like that.
Got it. Got it. Makes sense actually. It helps to have a questionnaire in general as well to uh,
Yeah,
like maybe do one level of screening if you're not getting enough liquidity of applicants, maybe loosen
yeah,
your screening criteria.
yeah.
Got it. So this is on the hiring manager screen, right? So now what does a usual interview process look like for say manual and an automation person? uh, if you can shed some light there.
Yeah, in general, for manual side, it might be a little bit straightforward. For
Mm-hmm.
automation side, it gets a little bit difficult to judge a
Mm-hmm.
candidate
Mm-hmm.
because you might have to judge on programming side and all of those. So
Right.
let me just start with manual side,
Mm-hmm.
how I generally do it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so for manual side, keeping it very short, sort of like three sort of rounds.
Mm-hmm.
One might be with hiring manager or like the recruiter itself, understanding like what kind of profile they are looking for, or maybe what kind of things they have worked, general call,
Right.
understanding the role mapping and all of those.
Right.
And then maybe then hiring manager can take a direct call, sort of
Right.
that giving a simple problem,
Right.
like this is the website or this is the mobile app application. Like how would you test this out? Uh,
Right.
for example, like just go to a sign up form of this
Right.
website and ask out like what all things would you test. Keep it a little bit
Right.
open ended,
Yeah.
and then maybe drill down in further, like
Right.
for UI testing, what would you do for a different kind of testing aspect, what all things you can do.
Right.
And
Probably something around say rate limiting as well. You can test if the candidate comes up with
y-
that.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
something like let's say you can ask them simply as well, like let's say the you entered a valid credential, sort of.
Hmm.
um, if clicking on submit, nothing
Right.
happens on the website,
Right.
what could go wrong, right?
Right.
There can be multiple phases, like front
Right.
end didn't call backend API,
A backend in.
yeah, or backend didn't respond it,
Right.
front end didn't pass the error message, things
Yeah.
like that. And then
Right.
maybe you can jump into more details, sort of like if the candidate mentioned backend side, right? Then maybe you
Right.
can ask simply, then how does the backend validate, like whether this is a valid question, not valid question, and things like that. Just to
Right.
understand like the depth of candidates' knowledge, like
Right.
whether they have the web fundamentals, mobile fundamentals, sort of how a website works, things like that. And
Right.
maybe just asking them out some situational question, like let's say, um, this is the requirement, right? And developer built it. Then as a QA, you validated it, but
Hmm.
it doesn't look like how the product team wants it, right?
Right.
Then how would you approach that piece? How would you communicate? There is a discrepancy.
Right.
What all things are there? So this is basically general QA specific things,
Right.
that situational things on manual side.
Right.
And then the final round maybe with a cultural sort of aspect, that if technically that candidate is good on manual
Right.
side,
Right.
then just ask out either someone on a hiring panel, take a cultural round for this candidate,
Right.
give them more situational question, right?
Right.
Let's say if there is a conflict between QA and developer, let's
Use
say,
things.
usual things, sort of like this is not a bug, this is a feature, things like that, right? And I developer saying this is how it will, QA saying no, this is what product requirement is,
Right.
things like that. And maybe like if there are certain limitations on engineering side, right, that developer has to go with certain approach, right? Then
Right.
there might be communication between developers and product, but QA doesn't have any reference of it.
Right.
Like this is the change that we are going to do.
Right.
How would you deal with certain things? How would you resolve a conflict between QA team itself, right? Like
Right.
you working with some other QA person, right?
Right.
There can be difference of opinion, and everyone has different perspective. So
Right.
there can be conflict. So how does a candidate react to it?
React to
And
that.
general companies culture fit and all those stuff.
Got it. So this
So
is for the manual side of things. I just
yeah,
want to have a follow-up question on the first part that you were mentioning, that you will give some example website and you would ask them to
yeah.
test out what all features. So does this happen on a live sort of video interview, or do you give this as an assignment and expect, say, a spreadsheet as an outcome of it?
Yeah, maybe that depends on like what kind of experience you want. If it
Mhm.
is a entry level, I don't think maybe you might need to give an assignment. You can
Mhm.
judge them based on the call itself.
Mhm.
Also, ask them out like some fundamental questions on website, how website work, API, and all of those things like that. And if the experience is higher, right, for automation side, I we can do it in two ways. I've tried couple of ways. So one way was like just giving a short 1 hour or 2 hours assignment, sort of like questions based on web automation, or like some fundamental question, like let's say if you are using a Selenium, right, how would you access a choice parameter on the web form? How would you switch to iframe and things like that?
Got it.
But generally what happens with those things is if the candidate doesn't have much experience on web part, right, then you might lose a good candidate in the assignment process itself.
Right. Right.
You might give them 1 week or 2 weeks time, right?
Right.
But the overall response rate, it shoots down, right?
Yeah.
Let's say you give assignment to 10 candidates. There are chances that people will only do one or two, because it's one or two candidate out of 10 they might do,
Right.
because like it's time consuming and things like that.
And they might be applying to multiple companies, all of which
Yeah,
are doing the same thing, right?
yeah, and
Uh, so I have one final question. Sort of, a lot of QAs you would have already seen that they would start out as a manual QA and they would work at an organization. But let's say they want to move to an automation role, right? Uh,
yeah,
how do they approach the job hunting for that, right? Because say for example, you are hiring an automation person. If someone is not having that automation experience, most likely you would not shortlist that person. So
Yeah.
how do you recommend this person to sort of switch to automation?
Yeah, I believe like this is an amazing topic to bring out
Yeah,
because in QA field, people want to move to automation at some point early or later stage.
right,
Uh, that's because like that is more technical role sort of, and people want to get exposure to that role. It
right,
opens up more career paths moving forward sort of. So in my experience, like I have hired people who have been working as manual. I have hired people who are I've basically helped out people whom didn't have QA experience, and then they moved to QA. Then they moved from QA manual to automation side.
right.
Um, so I would just say like you start with very basic things.
Got it.
So one basic thing is the programming side, right? Just learn one of the programming language, understand the fundamentals of it, the concept, right? OOPS concept, data structure, basic things around it.
Right,
See if you can design a class itself that solves like mathematical problems like addition, subtraction, and just keep on creating smaller scripts or projects,
right,
get an understanding of programming side. And then second important piece is basically understanding the web part of it, web fundamentals or like mobile or desktop app fundamentals.
right.
How does a website work, right? Like when you enter a URL in browser, what will happen?
Yeah,
Let's say now you figured out like how the website is fetched
right,
from DNS and other things. Then how does the web page is rendered?
right,
Like when you click on button, what happens?
right,
Whether it's a front end side logic that plays in picture, or whether it goes to back end, which goes to database and then gives the information to front end.
right,
Basic kind of things, right? So once you have like programming and web fundamental, then maybe expand your QA manual knowledge itself, right?
right.
So from QA side, manual side, right? Let's say if you are doing a feature test of a given website or mobile app,
Right,
then you might be doing it on a repetitive manner,
right,
right? So just understand like what all things you are doing repetitive in day-to-day
right.
time,
Yeah,
and see if you can optimize that, or just create a simple script
yeah,
and figuring out like uh, I'm doing this repetitive things, right?
yeah.
Like maybe just uh, for setting up the programming environment as well, right? You
Right,
might do a lot of things on your terminal when you
right,
start basic things, right? Checking
yeah,
out a repository, learning a little bit on Git side, and then maybe doing some setting up things of programming environment. Like for
right,
Ruby, you set up Ruby version and things like that. And you might be doing that in a repetitive manner.
right,
And even on like manual testing side, you are testing a feature and you are doing regression testing
right,
every week, every day. So think about like which feature you can do it in a easy way,
right.
and also think on like which tools can help you.
Mm-hmm.
I think on web part it's very straightforward. Selenium is the first place.
Right,
Uh, there are other tools that will help you, but
right.
Selenium is like wide known. For
Yeah,
mobile side, you can start with Appium
yeah.
and things like that, right?
Got it.
So I think three things. One is programming, then second is web fundamental, and then third is like using your QA knowledge to
To apply to those.
figure out like how you can reduce your manual effort.
Right, right,
And that's how like you can start building things. You can start thinking of like um, doing on easier way or and faster way, sort of.
Right, right. Makes sense. And let's assume like this is a mindset change that the person needs to have, right? That they need
Yeah,
to
yeah,
start
yeah,
learning a QA automation kind of role,
yeah,
and then they want to switch to it. But let's say that you're working at an organization as a manual QA, and
yeah,
that organization does not want to invest in automation, and they still want to continue manually. But this person needs to switch to a company which is requiring an automation role, right? So for him or her to write anything in their resume, do you recommend doing say projects, or do you recommend putting something in their GitHub? How do you recommend to improve their resume to be seen as an automation person?
yeah. So I think the first thing is like include whatever projects you have done.
Right,
Maybe you have done it for your learning experience. Just put it as a learning project. Maybe just put it like programming problems. I have solved this. On automation side, I built out this scripts.
right,
Just linking that out, and also maybe uh, these days you can also figure out like if you can do a freelance project
yeah,
in some way, right?
right,
You can go to multiple websites that are there and pick out a basic project,
yeah,
do it, and then also include that in
right.
resume. And I believe it's also on the another company's side, right? Whether they are open to
Open to hire them as
hire them or like hire in general as a fresher, right?
yeah,
Uh, so in my opinion, like if you are little bit average on skill set at the
right,
current point, but if you have a motivation to learn new things, right,
yeah,
then you might be a better candidate for me
right,
because you are eager to learn, you are eager to put out more effort from your side to build out yourself and learn new things, right?
right.
Uh, as a hiring manager, I would just have to judge, right, whether that resource would be valuable for our team currently, or like maybe we can ask that candidate to reapply in 3 months or maybe something like that, right?
Got it, got it.
Um, and yeah, that's a little bit about that.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So, the same question is for like web automation and mobile automation as well, right? A lot of people who are doing web automation right now want to learn or get a job into mobile automation, right? So,
Yeah.
how do they go about doing that, and what are the differences between these two worlds?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the core knowledge, right, between both the platform, it might be very similar, sort of. It's a
Mm.
website. It is accessible by browser, right?
Right.
And at the end, it goes through the backend side and fetches
Yeah.
your information and gives you on website.
Right.
On mobile side, as a user, you have a application itself that does the similar things.
Right.
Um, so if you are good with the fundamental knowledge of how things work, then you just have to figure out the tools that helps you do mobile automation, sort of, right? So one is Appium, right? If you are very good with Selenium, it might be very easy to use Appium, sort of, because
Right.
Appium is built on Selenium on top of it, right? So it has the similar fundamentals. It also creates WebDriver, and you can access it via driver piece. One maybe tricky thing that can help happen for mobile side is like mobile. There are two core platforms, right? One is
Right.
Android, another is iOS.
Yeah.
We had Nokia as well.
Yeah.
They had their own OS system and all of those. So figuring out like which platform needs what kind of setup. So that might be one thing that is very tricky.
Right.
So uh, in general, you can do it step by step, sort of. That first set up Android.
Android and then
Uh,
move to other platforms.
yeah, use a sample APK file. See if you can launch that APK on a mobile side, right?
Right.
On Android.
Right.
iOS needs its own ecosystem of Mac.
Right.
So maybe like if you have Mac, then you can use Xcode, build out your own app,
Right.
and try to launch it, sort of, and set up. on iOS side, like what all things are required,
Right.
because iOS is more trickier than Android. iOS driver itself has very limitation. Apple, that's because of Apple, right? Everything
Right.
is very restricted, sort of.
Right.
Um, so you can do it in that way.
Got it.
Just basic launching of it, but the fundamental remains same, right? How you access a website using Selenium, right?
Yeah.
Calling the functions and doing that. On
Right.
mobile side, it might be little different,
Right.
like how you find an element, how do you do a click, how, and before that, before finding an element itself, how does the DOM structure look like, right? How
Yeah.
do you get access to it?
Right.
So things like that.
Right.
So just if you have a knowledge of web part, then
Right.
I think it might be easier to understand mobile.
Yeah.
Uh, but on mobile side, you might have to put in more effort to understand Android and then iOS, how things work, how the Appium works with both of them,
Right.
whether that is straightforward, whether that is a different. And nowadays there are SaaS products as well, right? So
Yeah.
you can just put out the APK file or IPA file on a website, and then you can just do click and just do like basic record and play sort of. Uh,
Right.
and then maybe you can also understand from such SaaS product, right?
Got it.
Maybe just do a demo call with them to understand
Understood.
like how basic things work, how they do record and play.
Right.
Um, yeah,
Makes sense. Makes sense. Sounds good, Arpit. Thanks a lot for patiently answering all the
yeah.
questions and much more in detail. So yeah, we are at a wrap. Thanks a lot, Arpit, for your time and any closing words for QAs looking out for jobs in this market.
Yeah, thanks. First of all, thanks for asking me to join this call. And I'm happy to share my knowledge, sort of, and experience as well in this call. Um, and for last word, sort of, I believe like it's on every individual whether they want to grow in certain areas or whether they want to do only manual testing, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like manual testers don't have a long career or something like that. They
Right.
also can become a proficient. They also can become very proficient in that
Right.
expertise, and it's a manual testing expertise that everyone will look out. And there
Yeah.
are companies that I for sure know that they will look out. And similar for automation, right? It's a separate expertise, sort of
Right.
similar to developer role, right? Like developer also, there are like front end engineers, back end engineers, there are platform engineers, right? So
Right.
everyone is specialized within themselves, right? So
Right.
if you can grow to the extent of it, and let's say you like it, then
Right.
just continue doing it,
Continue.
and then just grow in that field. And I believe like QA is a very interesting role.
Yeah.
So it's basically like it's a part of software development life cycle itself. So every role is having equal impact, sort of, in my opinion. So yeah, just believe in yourself and keep growing and keep learning more things so that you be a specialized in your area, whether it's a manual, whether it's a automation, or whether you want to move to another area, whether you want to become a developer after becoming automation side. Then it just your willpower, your motivation that will drive you to that field.
Right. I think
Yeah,
we missed that part, but let's save it for the next episode.
yeah, yeah,
Using
yeah,
how the transition happens out of QA to say
yeah,
developer or product manager.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.